we are working on a ticket. This ticket has to do with automating our deployment processes. These are automated so you don't mess it up. And all you have to do to deploy your code or get a new version of your code base out to your customers is hit a button. But in order to automate it, you have to write scripts to automate it. And that is what I'm working on right now. So I could create all these scripts from scratch and do that work, but there's actually another team that has already done this, and so we're gonna take a look at what they have done and copy it and then make it work for our team. The reason we have to redo our pipelines, or really it's not redo, it's more like create new ones, is because this particular microservice is using a different technology than some of our other microservices. And because of that, the deployment process has also changed because the way it's hosted has changed. So in seeing some of the scripts from the other team, we'll be able to have a general baseline of an example of what the pipeline could be for us, or what our automated scripts that will do the deployment, what those will look like. And we'll see how much we want to take from it versus how much we want to do from scratch. A lot of engineers come in and they want to reinvent the wheel and understand every single piece of code that goes into something. I look at the big picture. Does it work or does it not work? And based on that, then you can iterate it to make it work better. I like to have a general baseline for something that's working and then iterate on it, improve upon it as we go. So I'm going to take a look at the scripts and see how much of it we can actually reuse. So I've taken a look at the pipelines and I have some questions. So I'm going to set up a meeting with the engineer that actually worked on it. And a lot of times you can use GitHub and use Git blame to see who's been writing the code, who's been maintaining it. And so I set up a meeting with this person and I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. One, what problems were they trying to solve? Why were certain design decisions made? Really just try to get some more information about the context in which these pipelines were written. There are also some things that were in these pipelines that I'm unfamiliar with, certain resources they're using. I'm curious if they're actually useful resources and whether our team should take those on and use those as well. Some of them were security resources, some of them were notification resources, and so notifying the team when a deployment's been done. That's something that's like really interesting and like kind of an add-on feature that I think our team is gonna like. So I'm gonna ask about that. Other questions are, they're using a container in their pipelines in order to run each part of the pipeline. What is in this container? I don't know. I was able to find a few things in it just from running the scripts and understanding like, okay, this setup configuration must have been done in the Docker container because it's not in the script. There's something from their pipelines I want to reuse. One of their containers, it would be nice if we could use it too versus setting up my own. So I'm gonna ask about that. There are certain code pieces that are separated that usually you would find together. Typically you would have application code in one code repo, and then anything that has to do with automation or your automated scripts, that will go in a different repo. And there's a little bit of commingling in this architecture. So really trying to understand, like, is there a benefit to that, and kind of having some of this automation spread around. Really trying to understand the context and not like judge why it was done a certain way. I think a lot of engineers will come in and say, your pipeline is wrong, you did not do it. And well, they use these pipelines for many different microservices, and so clearly it's working well enough. There's something that's special that we would have to do in order to get our analytics translated to this other analytics service. It seems like they would have to do that too, but I don't see it anywhere in the scripts, and so I'm going to ask them about that. Like, how are they sending those analytics and setting up some of these credentials and environment variables? They do some tagging, which I haven't really used tagging in a version control tool, so gonna ask about why they do that. And then they also have an environment variable that seems very like a duplicate. It's like another name for the microservice, this environment variable, and I'm curious to know, like, why is it needed? And maybe it's not needed for us, maybe it is needed for us. We will see. So we're gonna meet with her, and it's so exciting to talk with another woman engineer about a technical problem in and it's not just a women in tech event. While those are useful and necessary and important, to be able to meet with another woman engineer and talk about a technical topic, it's rarer than you think. It's kind of like the Bechdel test. Like, a given film needs to have 2 women talking, and they have to talk about something other than a man. Not many films pass it. I wonder if there is a similar test to describe representation for women in tech. And that's it for now. All right, so we just got out of the meeting. We learned some things. It looks like there's a lot of this pipeline we're gonna be able to reuse. That's great. We're not gonna copy them verbatim. There are some tweaks, some changes that we'll need to make in order for it to fit our team, but it did serve as a great baseline for deploying this type of service to this new type of infrastructure. I've put a PR up and it has some comments. Let's check it out and see what the team thinks of tackling it in this way. I've also asked the person I met with for her to review the PR because she was the original author of something very similar, and she might be able to catch some things that may not be transferred over the same way. So one thing she caught was this emoji. So in the notification that we send out when we've deployed, she's using a team emoji, and we have an emoji for our team that is different from her team, and so gonna replace that with our team's emoji. We were able to improve her pipeline. There's a certain way the environment variable is passed for analytics, and so we were able to kind of do it in a different way, and I think she's gonna apply that to her pipelines as well. Another comment we got is whether this specific, it's not really a credential, but it's a link to something, a URL, whether it should be in our vault. Usually a team will have a secrets manager or a vault or something to store their API keys, anything that could be deemed secret. Sometimes you might find them encrypted and you use a key to decrypt them. Lots of different ways you can do it. This given URL, it doesn't really do much, and so I don't think it's insecure to have it in this particular file. And then the engineer on the other team who originated a lot of this pipeline work, they also backed me up on that. But that was a good comment to have just in case it was secure or something. There was also a comment about whether we're doing continuous integration. So continuous deployment, continuous integration. So that means when I merge a change, or basically I have this code up for review, I decide to merge it into the main code base, will it automatically get deployed to our non-prod environment or our production environment? So I was able to answer that, what the plan is for both non-prod and prod. There was a comment about readability. So I put all of these parameters kind of on the same line, and this engineer wanted me to kind of break it up and put it on separate lines. I was like, sure, that's fine. There's something that we generate in one of the scripts. Instead of generating it, we could pass it into the script. And so there was a comment about that, like, do we want to make this generic? Do we want to pass it in? There's a question about how a given field is being passed into this script and whether it actually is passed in, and like, how does that work? I was able to answer those questions. Yeah, so I answered all those questions, and then they have now been approved, which is great. And so I'll merge it. Something that's really interesting is that usually application code goes through a version control system, and that's great. But what about your infrastructure code? What about your automated scripts? Those should also, in theory, try to go through a version control system, so that way someone's not just changing things in the cloud and you don't know about it. Now, this code submission, this PR was basically meant to get us up and running, but there are a lot of things that we could improve upon with our automated scripts, and they're more nice to haves. As an engineer, you cannot work on everything. You cannot build every possible idea that comes to mind, and a lot of times it becomes over engineering if you do that. If I wanted these pipelines to be absolutely perfect, these automated scripts to be incredible, it would take me a few months to make them perfect. And by the time that they're perfect, maybe the requirements change, maybe there are other priorities, and no one really cares about how perfect the pipeline is. They just want a way to deploy to the environments. It's really that line of how perfect do you need to make your code and how readable does it need to be, how maintainable, versus we kind of need this feature right now. There are lots of engineers on the let's make it perfect side, and there are lots of engineers on let's not write the tests and just merge it. I don't really know where I fall. It depends on the task, but it's something to think about as you're reviewing or writing code, and it's not really talked about. All right, so I was looking at my email from Amazon Music, and you think, okay, it's Amazon Music, they have to be legit. This is not Amazon. So this is some kind of spam. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna put it into Google, and it's some AI service. I don't know if Amazon has hired this service, but I feel like they have their own AI and they don't need Veritone to be sending out these emails. All right, so a while back, we submitted a request to get access to our own environment in this special tool. It's a part of this ticket, and we've finally gotten through, and we have our own namespace, our own environment to create these flows in that we need to create for our product. Basically, the ticket was to copy things from this old environment or this demo environment into an environment where we can actually work on it and make it productionalized. We proved with the proof of concept that working with this technology in a specific way worked, and now we want to actually make it into a product. So the first step in that was to get our own namespace and move over anything from the demo so that maybe we can reuse it, maybe we can just learn from it into this new namespace. So we copied all of that. That was great. But their copy functionality, it didn't really copy. It copied a portion of each data piece, but not all of it. And most of them we were able to figure out, but some of them we were not. And so we're gonna actually meet with the team that runs this proprietary tool that our flows are going to be in and see what's going on. Since we're working in an environment that is run by another team versus like a coding language in your own IDE, I'm sure there are logs, but I don't have access to the logs. And I'm sure there are ways to troubleshoot whether your flow is working or not within this tool, but again, maybe don't have access to those either. So meeting with the team to get access, as well as to understand what is the best practice for troubleshooting in this product, in this namespace. So those will all be good. It's actually pretty interesting because this particular task is not very coding heavy. We're working within a tool to develop a product, but the tool is more of a drag and drop. It's more of a configuration rather than writing if-then statements in C++ or something. A lot of times, even if something doesn't involve coding, but it feels more technical or feels like configuration, software engineers can sometimes get assigned to work on it. And that's because your other options are a product manager or a project manager or someone from an analytics team, but a lot of times those aren't the right fit. So if there's ever anything technical, sometimes it just lands on the software engineers to work on it or maintain it. So we met with the team and we got everything copied over. I've translated a lot of what we talked about into a document so that we don't always have to meet with them if we want to debug something in this environment, in this tool. So now I just have to wait for the team to look at it, review it, see if it makes sense, make sure everything's copied over correctly, and then we can start building, which will be pretty good. We just got some tickets in from our product group about what they want configured in this tool. Very general and what the overall big picture should be. My birthday is tomorrow. I turn 26. Yeah, these nails, they need to be redone. I get the S&S dip powder and it lasts like a solid 3 weeks. We'll also get a pedicure. Let's treat ourselves. And then we also got a package. I really like to read.